Hello. Yeah, we believe it's working now. So can I suggest that Alan starts his presentation again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. I'm Alan Rainford. I'm the Treasurer of the Fire Authority. This is the first budget monitoring report of the current financial year. It reflects the position at an early stage of the financial year. So the report focuses on the most obvious variations in spending, variations when compared to budget. The fire service has incurred additional spending relating to the COVID pandemic. However, the government has issued us with 2 additional grants to cover those costs. We've had 2 tranches of government grants, one of approximately 170,000, which came in at the end of the last financial year, and we've had a grant of just under 800,000 that came in at the beginning of this current financial year to meet the additional cost that we've incurred. So particularly the second grant has been paid up front, so it helps us with cash flow. We've also had some other additional grants that we hadn't budgeted for, including an extra £300,000 to cover the costs of increased employer contributions to the pension scheme. Members may recall that this was quite a significant issue that we flagged up in the budget, and we still have uncertainty as to whether this grant was going to continue for next year. There have been underspends also in some of the support services of about 137,000. So in overall terms, the total variation amounted to an underspend of 220,000 when compared to the revenue budget. And this position is summarised on page 11. In keeping with the policy agreed by the authority, it's proposed that the underspend be taken to capital reserves to fund the capital programme, and therefore to limit the amount of borrowing that we might need to do in the future. One issue that isn't reflected in this report, because it's only come to light relatively recently, is that the staff pay award has been announced, and that's come in at 2.75% and is effective from June. This is more than the 2% that we budgeted for, and we'll have to therefore make an assessment of the additional costs and include that in the budget monitoring report at the half-yearly stage. The main message really that I want to get across and to take from this report is that the coronavirus pandemic is not having a significant financial impact this year, largely due to the additional government grants that we've had. However, it is next year when it is likely to cause us a significant financial problem. There are 2 areas where it's likely to cause us a problem. The first relates to the impact that the pandemic has had on collection performance in terms of council tax and business rates in the current financial year. And the Cheshire authorities have until January 2021 to notify us of that position. It's highly likely that the pandemic will have had a significant negative impact on the collection performance, and this is likely to have produced a deficit on the collection funds, which we will need to contribute to and budget for next year. The government have recognised this, and they are allowing local authorities to spread those deficits, should they occur, over a 3-year period. The other impact it's likely to have will be that the unity authorities will have to estimate the collection performance next year in 2021 in the light of the experience in 2021 for when we set the budget for 21-22. So that then gets reflected in the council tax base and the business rate base figures that we use to budget for 21-22. It's highly likely that we won't see growth in the council tax base and the business rate base to the extent that we've seen in the past, and we may even see a reduction in these levels, and that therefore will impact on the level of income that we can budget for 21-22. So we'll be keeping our eyes on the Chancellor's budget statement and the spending review, which is expected in the autumn, to see if there's any additional grant funding to local authorities to compensate them in 21-22. That's all I intended to say, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Have any members indicated they wish to speak? And anyone on the phone, don't forget to also speak up. I'm looking at the conversation on the chat and I can't see anyone indicated, but Andrew, is there anyone?
No, not at this point.
Yes, I have a question, Chair.
Councillor Lewis.
Yeah. Obviously, we've had extra funding given to us by the government and we've got an underspend. Is there any danger of them wanting to claw some of that back?
We do have to submit return to the government relating to the additional grant that they've provided us with. I'm not aware of any, at the moment, of any intention to claw any back. It looks in any event like we're going to spend the amount that we've had so far.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else? I've just got one quick question myself, is that obviously if we've got an underspend and we're intending to move that to capital to reduce borrowing, we've already indicated that you've indicated that we're going to have an issue with the pay award provision. So we should have enough funding with the additional funding to cover that, shouldn't we, at a later date, presumably?
Yes, I mean, if we found that we had a problem with the revenue account, with the revenue budget, in keeping expenditure within the revenue budget because of unforeseen factors, we can always move the contribution, which we put into reserves, back to the revenue budget. That wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your questions and comments. Does anybody else wish to speak or ask anything further? No? Okay, right. I believe we're able to note the forecast outturn position and approve the movements in reserves and then move to the next item. I'll pause for 10 seconds in case any member disagrees. Please indicate that you wish to speak, or if you were on the phone, please speak up and I will invite you to speak. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item then. Item 3, Performance Report Quarter 1 2020-2021. These are on pages 19 to 68 on the agenda. Lee Shears to report.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. I'm Lee Shears. I'm presenting the paper agenda item 3 in your packs, as the Chair says, starting on page 19. This paper details the service's Quarter 1 performance for the year 2020-2021. So I intend to focus this morning on those indicators where performance not to the expected standard, but I'm also going to comment on some indicators where performance has improved. Now, obviously, if you have any questions or comments about any of the other indicators that I don't cover, then obviously please ask. So firstly, I just want to bring to members' attention some changes in this report by comparison with previous reports. Now, these are detailed in the covering paper at paragraphs 5 to 9, but to summarise, we've got 3 new indicators in this report. One is to monitor false alarms that the service attends. One is to monitor the number of road traffic collisions that the service attends, which is also intended to complement the IRMP objective around road safety. And both of those will provide management information to enable further analysis by officers. Now, there are no targets applied to those 2 new indicators at this stage. There's a 3rd new indicator, which is in relation to the service's risk-based inspection programme, which is now included to show how much by percentage of that programme has been completed. Now, I'll touch on those indicators in more detail as we work through the health reports. And finally, just in terms of changes, there's also a new infographic in your pack, which demonstrates the activities that the services have been doing specific to COVID-19. And I'll bring that to members' attention in the report a little further on. So if I could just ask you all to turn to page 22 in your pack, you'll see the corporate scorecard and the range of performance indicators which provide the summary position on one page for all of our indicators. Now you'll note from that scorecard that performance is mixed, with many indicators showing green in quarter 1, but there are also a number of red indicators. Now, members will appreciate that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on performance, And many of the red indicators on the scorecard are in areas where the service has not been delivering its usual activities due to infection control measures and the lockdown. Now, this applies specifically to the output indicators that you'll see on the scorecard, such as thematic inspections, fire safety audits, and safe and well visits. Now, on the flip side, the lockdown period has also had a positive impact on some of the incident indicators where we've seen reduced incident numbers. And I'll touch on some of those as we go through the report. So if members could turn to page 24, please, and the deaths in primary fires indicator. So members will see on that indicator that sadly in Q1 there were 2 deaths in primary fires, both of which occurred at the same incident and both involved people over the age of 65. And the cause of this incident was smoking in bed. If you move over to page 26 and injuries in primary fires, members will see that there were 14 injuries in Q1, which was 3 over the target. And you'll also note from the report, from the analysis within the report, that 7 of those injuries were serious injuries. Now, each of those serious injuries has been subject to a detailed investigation to identify any lessons learned and improvements to reduce similar injuries and incidents in the future. Now, if I could just ask members to move relatively far forward in the packs to page 43, please, and the safe and well target. Now, you'll see that performance in this area is significantly reduced from our normal levels and from the target. Now, the cause of this, as I've already highlighted a couple of times so far, is the impact of COVID-19 and the fact that staff, in the most part, stopped doing safe and well activities. Now, you'll see that there were 1,443 visits that actually took place, and these consisted of the highest risk and most vulnerable households that have been prioritised for interventions. Now, that's evidenced further overleaf on page 44, where you will see that 94% of the visits were from the platinum or highest risk address categories. Moving on now to page 45 and thematic inspections. Again, you'll see there's another indicator that's been massively affected by COVID-19, and thematic inspections were stopped and they are yet to restart. Again, overleaf on page 46 and fire safety audits in non-domestic premises. A similar story with this indicator, heavily impacted by lockdown and COVID-19, limiting the activities that inspecting staff could conduct. Now, inspecting staff did move to a desktop audit process to try to continue to carry out their functions, but in practice it meant that a large number of audits and inspections couldn't be fully completed because they require a physical inspection to be carried out of the premises. So they will be carried out at a later date. Now, overleaf on page 47 is the first of the new indicators that I mentioned earlier, and this is the risk-based inspection program indicator, which is intended to complement the fire safety audits indicator I've just talked about. It shows how many of the highest risk premises have been audited, and it's included to provide some assurance that the highest risk non-domestic premises have been audited, rather than just reporting on the numbers of audits that have been completed. Now, unfortunately, in Q1, as I've mentioned, the auditability of the inspecting staff has been affected, so therefore the risk-based audits weren't able to be conducted either. Moving on to page 51, if you will, and on-call availability. This, as usual, is supported by a summary table, which is contained in Appendix 5 on page 67, if you want the additional information. But members will note that this target has been met in Q1, whereby it's normally under target in a number of areas because of problems with certain on-call stations and their availability. Now, the positive news with this indicator is due in large part to a lot of our workforce working from home. So our on-call firefighters working from home or being furloughed from their primary employment, which has led to an increase in on-call appliance availability across the period. If I could ask you to move to page 55 and the health report for working days lost to injury, members will see that this indicator is over target, and that's the result of 3 accidents. Now, 2 of those accidents occurred in the last year. However, the impact of those are resulting in continued absence into Q1 of this year. Now, the next thing I just want to touch on is a couple of the other new indicators that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. So firstly, on page 56 is the new indicator in relation to road traffic collisions that the service attends. So members will see from the chart at the bottom of page 57 that the number of road traffic collisions that we attended in Q1 has been significantly affected by the lockdown and the reduction in traffic on the roads. In a positive way, there were a lot fewer road traffic collisions that we attended within that period. And then again, overleaf on page 59 is one of the other new indicators, which is the total number of false alarms attended. Now, members will see from that health report that approximately 40% of the incidents that the service attends are recorded as false alarms in some way. So this indicator is intended to enable officers to carry out further analysis and identify whether there are any further reductions that can be made in this area over time. And then finally, on page 64 is a new infographic which has been included in the report for this time, that shows what activities the staff carried out to support the wider community COVID-19 efforts. And you'll note that there are a number of different activities within that infographic, and some significant numbers demonstrating where the service have been able to add value and assist people and partners to provide services, which is very positive. And that concludes the report from me on Q1 performance, unless any members have got any questions.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Have any members indicated they wish to speak? Anyone on the phone should also speak up. Andrew Ledbetter.
Just Councillor Nicholas.
James, I think got James Nicholas, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, if I might. I'm just a clarification of some point. False alarms on page 59. What do you classify? Can you, is somebody phoning up and calling out the let me start again. What do you classify as a false alarm?
So there are a number of categories, Councillor. So if you just turn to page 60 for me, please. You'll see there's a few tables there. So the middle table, which talks about the type of false alarm. So at the top, you've got false alarm due to apparatus. So that's generally a false alarm generated by a fire alarm, by smoke detectors operating. And you'll know from one of the other indicators within the pack that we do a lot of work to reduce false alarms in non-domestic premises. And we've had some significant success doing so. But there are also a lot of false alarms generated by smoke alarms in things like sheltered accommodation, blocks of apartments, blocks of flats, and other residential premises which don't come under that indicator. So that is one type. And then you've got things like false alarms which are classified in that table as good intent, and that can be something like a member of the public who might phone in and say they've seen smoke coming from a building, and we attend, and that's a false alarm. It's coming from, say, a boiler outlet or a chimney, and also things like road traffic or attendances at vehicles that may be smoking, or passing cars have said look like they're smoking. Well, it might just be an overheating engine or overheating brakes, and they're classified as false alarms as well. So there's a number of different things, and we just want to be able to analyse that data and see if there's any areas there where we can actually achieve any reductions. So.
Right, but that's all part of the 40%. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I missed that bit on page 60. Thanks.
No problem.
Hey, thank you, James. I've got Gina Lewis next. Gina?
Yes, sorry, Chairman. Yes, it was just to compliment the staff for all that they've done.
Oh, right, okay. Right.
Thanks, Gina.
People realise just how much was done.
Right. Have I got any other speakers or questions?
No one's indicated.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Right, I believe we're able to note the report and move to the next item then, but I'll pause for 10 seconds in case any member disagrees. Please indicate if you wish to speak, or if you're on the phone, please speak up and I'll invite you to speak. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item then. Item 4, Programme Report Quarter 1, 2020-2021. Another good report. Mark Cashin to report.
Thanks, Chair. My name is Mark Cashin, and I'm going to, as you say, talk to this report. Good morning, members. As is the norm with this report, I'll go through the report, picking out key sections of performance where performance stands out due to either slippage in areas or areas that we are exceeding. However, as is always the case, I'm happy to answer questions at the end on any section of the report, including any area that I've not touched upon whilst I've been giving some commentary. If I can take you to paragraph 4 on page 69 of the report, which mentions that RMP objectives will be reported at the next meeting. Page 71, you will see, will details what these areas are, and they will be familiar to members because obviously they're in the RMP that you very recently approved. We have spent quite a bit of time as an SMT in the past few weeks since CFA developing project initiation documents to deliver in all these areas, and we will be reporting against them in some detail at the next meeting. If I can take you to page 72, that shows that the whole service review is now green, and in effect, the recent RMP that was approved by members was the culmination of this work, and this specific project will be moving to close down with all the projects on the previous page being delivered as a result of it. The next project that brings us to is priority-based budgeting, and that is also similar. This is a process that's now been implemented and is in fact day job, and the project will also move to close down. If I can now take you to page 73, Blue Light Collaboration, that shows us green now. I just want to remind members that it was previously amber, not through any fault of our own, but previously because we were awaiting the PFI company coming back to sign the underlease at Clements Hay. What I'd like to do now, members, is pick up a lot of the building work together, which have been a major part of the programme work that we've been doing over the past few years and indeed continue to do. So I'm going to pick up building work that actually occurs across pages 73, 74, 76 and 77. I'll start by saying that our major build projects at Chester and the training centre, although slightly delayed due to issues around COVID, but considering the impact of COVID elsewhere, performance against these is actually generally really good. Members will also see from page 77, costs around the training centre do exceed our original contingency, and the reasons for this are described in the report, but are largely due to planning, the fire alarm for the broader building, which ultimately was impossible for us not to replace, and similarly the window replacement across the original building that needed replacing at the same time. With regards Crewe Fire Station on page 74, you'll see that it doesn't have a status. And this is simply because the timelines and milestones are inextricably linked to whichever build option is ultimately decided upon. And this is currently being determined. We should be able to determine a work programme shortly after that. The final mention that I want to make on build programmes is on page 76 on station modernisations. As you can see from the report, year 1 is complete and we are now progressing with year 2. COVID has meant that members have been unable to see the work generally. And we were really very keen for you to actually see it at some point in the future when you can do. But the feedback we've had from personnel on stations has been absolutely excellent. Like all build projects, there's been a bit of pain while some of the building's been going on, but the results have really been worth it. And actually had some personal feedback from a station not long ago that was saying that it almost transformed the culture on the station, the physical changes that had been implemented. Page 75 mentions the protection review, and as the report explains, This is amber because the work is deliberately paused. Now, it is possible that if we could, we could change ourselves to from amber to green notionally just by reconfiguring the milestones within there, but it's been paused deliberately whilst we wait further outcomes from Grenfell. I can now take you to page 78, members. This does show some slippage in the operational training group review. And whilst this is partly due to COVID, it has been running for a while, and there are a number of reasons. One of those is that we've swapped out managers on a number of occasions. Also, changing shift systems is never a straightforward process. You can see from the report that time is being dedicated to this work, and we are keen to get the right staffing model sorted, hopefully in the near future, because of course the training centre will be coming online in the not too distant future, and it needs to have a fit for purpose system that can operate from it. That same page shows slippage with the drone project, but you can see from the commentary that this is now progressing quite well. And the keen-eyed amongst you will have spotted, I suspect, that page 81 is actually a duplicate of page 75, and I've already commented upon that. I just wanted to say, members, that considering what the service has had to manage with COVID and all the new work that's been taken on in the past 6 months as a result of it, we're actually in a really good place. COVID has caused delays in signing off the RMP, which is why the RMP projects are not live in this report yet. But as the service has moved from managing COVID to living with COVID and now restarting the organisation, we've also had an even busier month or two than normal. As I said previously, despite this, I do genuinely think that we're in a really good place as a service. At that point, I'm going to take a pause, members, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, have you got any questions?
No one has indicated at this point.
Right, okay. Just a minor thing. Obviously, if we're into design and build proposals in the next few months, I know the workforce being consulted. I presume the members are just going to pick that up in the UPG meetings locally as well as the States Committee. Correct, assuming that.
That is correct, but we'll probably also bring stuff to planning days. We usually do for major infrastructure projects like Crew. We will almost certainly share that with all members, but the detail, as you say, will be taken at you.
Please indicate that if you wish to speak, or if you're on the phone, please speak up and I'll invite you to speak. Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item. Item 5, Internal Audit Quarter 1 2021 Progress Report. Anne-Marie Harrop to report. Is Anne-Marie there?
Oh yeah, sorry. Morning,
It's
members.
okay.
Start again. My mic wasn't on. Just to give you some assurance that we've actually started the audit plan now. 50% of our workforce were redeployed up to June. And so from July onwards, we've been back to business as usual, and we've started work on the pensions review, and we've issued the payroll audit terms of reference out for consultation. That work is due to commence in September. We've started our work on following up recommendations from previous years, and we've made some preparations for the National Fraud Initiative data collection arrangements. So that's things like informing all staff that we're going to be using their data, putting notifications out in as part of the payroll, and working with the head of finance to agree how we're going to take that word forward later in the year. So just to give you some assurance that we're back to business as usual and we're cracking on with the plan. At this stage, we don't envisage any issues in terms of delivery, but obviously we don't know what's ahead of us in terms of winter preparations. So yeah, we'll keep you posted on progress.
Okay, any questions from members or observations?
No one's indicated.
Definitely silence there.
Yeah, no one's indicated.
Okay, all right. I believe we're able to note the report and move to the next item then, which is good progress because the slight delays we've had. I'll pause for 10 seconds though in case any member disagrees. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item, item 6, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Annual Report 2019-20. Benji Evans to report.
Morning, Chair, morning, members. I'm Benji Evans, Quality and Inclusion Officer. As you'll see from the report, there's been many accomplishments over the last 12 months, particularly the last 6 months when under what's been challenging times. I have pulled out some key headlines. In February, we learned as a service that we'd retained our 3rd position in our Stonewall Workplace Equality Index. In recent months, we have continued to develop our LGBT inclusion work. Due to COVID-19, Stonewall have deferred this year's Equality Index submission until 2021. So there's lots of new criteria for us to get our teeth into. There's going to be more focus around intersectionality, and there's going to be lots of opportunities for us to raise awareness around some of the lesser known equality strands such as bi, pan, sexuality and non-binary. Due to COVID, we have continued to raise awareness and maintain visibility of all equality, diversity related themes. In some cases, we haven't just maintained awareness, but we've actually increased visibility in terms of our work around religious celebrations, disability, mental health, race equality and culture. We've established a BAME staff network. We've managed to have our first meeting back in March, just 1 week before lockdown, and we have since met virtually. Our BAME agenda is particularly important. BAME communities are a high-risk group in relation to COVID-19, and they're also an underrepresented group when we look at the diversity of our workforce, our volunteers and our youth provision. So the BAME network will provide insight and enable us to access first-hand experience and knowledge. Last week, we held an internal Fire Pride event. This was COVID-safe environment, and it provided an excellent opportunity to bring people together. I've already used the term intersectionality when I mentioned about the Stonewall criteria, and this event last week was a great example of how we're taking an holistic approach. Although it was a Pride event, we were able to promote all our staff networks, including our BAME network and our women's network. We're involving our young people, our cadets and volunteers. We're promoting mental health and wellbeing. And we also invited some external partners, including Chester Pride and body positive charities to promote their services. Addressing disproportionality within the workforce is important. We know this is going to be a key objective of ours, but also HMIC will be looking at workforce diversity going forward, and we can be very proud of the way that we're widening access, engaging and targeting underrepresented groups. As a service, we reviewed how we promote our job vacancies, and there's some excellent opportunities for us to engage closer with the voluntary community sector to promote careers to underrepresented groups. Our positive action group will be meeting in the next month to plan recruitment for the next year, and the specific work being conducted with our on-call team to attract more people from underrepresented groups for on-call positions. There's lots of exciting work coming up. So here's some save the dates for some up and coming events and campaigns, and extend the invite to all members to get involved. On the 23rd of September, we'll be celebrating visibility, and we'll be launching a week-long campaign called By Your Side, where we'll be promoting educational resources, holding virtual sessions and running 2 walk and talk sessions. The dates and details to be confirmed, but we know we'll be having a walk and talk in Delamere Forest and one later in the week at Lymm. During October, it'll be Black History Month, and our vision is to support every station, office and department to hold an awareness session and spend at least 1 hour during the month to recognise the outstanding contributions that Black people have made here in Britain. Our BAME network will be supporting the event, and there's some genuine excitement around this piece of work. On the 9th and 10th of October, we'll be organising a World Mental Health event, but there will be activities running over the week to widen access for on-call and part-time staff. On Thursday, the 17th of November, we'll be holding our Proud to Provide 2 virtual event. Following the success of the 2019 event, we wanted to follow up and build on last year's successes. Sadly, we had to cancel the original date on the 30th of June due to COVID-19. However, we have reorganised the event to be run as a virtual event in November. So with regards to all these events, there'll be regular updates and information going out to everyone to keep everyone informed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Benji. Another great report. I've got Gina Lewis first. Gina?
Sorry. Two questions with regard to policy development. I'm pleased to see the new menopause policy. I don't think it's appreciated just how much effect the menopause has on women especially. In terms of the paternity policy, does this include people who are going through adoption? Obviously, most people think of paternity being associated, as you said, with antenatal appointments, etc. But obviously, people who are in the process of going through adoption also have quite a lot of work to do when they introduce a new member of the family. And finally, the other question is with regard to what happens after people, once we get through the sort of initial phase of the return to work, what happens to those people who have perhaps indicated that they would wish to remain working from home in terms of the support that they're given? Because obviously not everybody has the correct seating or desk area and so on.
Benji, before you reply, can you also ask that if Mark Cashin's got any comments to make in regards to any plans for a reset plan for the service or whatever to also add in if he needs to? Okay. If you can respond to those, Benji, thanks.
Chair, I think I'm going to respond. It's Mark Cashin here. Benji and I have just glanced at each other, so I think I'll respond. If I miss anything, Benji can chime in. So certainly on the first question around adoption leave, I think we have probably one of the best adoption leave policies in the country, Councillor Lewis. So we absolutely do take on board the points that you've made. You're absolutely right. Actually, there are a whole range of issues. Indeed, I've not shared it widely, but we recently had a fabulous set of photos and letters from somebody who's just adopted, and I could probably get framed the things that he said about the service because we stand out compared to other organisations in the recognition of elements like that. The other question with regards to people working at home, it's a really good question actually. It's something that we've been doing some significant work on just recently because it's been a bit of a journey the past few months. I think when we first went into lockdown and we moved to alternate ways of working, people just found ways of working. But you're absolutely right. People's homes, in many cases, have become almost their office. And if we can, and we do believe that we can, people can work efficiently at home rather than coming into work. There will be a whole range of benefits for doing that. And we're exploring that at the moment. Even post-COVID, we believe that there'll be environmental and also financial savings for individuals and possibly efficiencies for them working from home, at least for some of their contractual week. I do have some concerns about isolation, and we're also considering that at the same time. I don't want a circumstance where somebody is permanently working from home 5 days a week because actually we are social animals. We want to make sure that we can keep an eye out for people. So there will still be an element of people having to come into work at some point in the future. But the stuff about equipment is a very personal one. There's guidance that's literally, as we speak, about to go out to staff, which is going to allow them to purchase within certain financial limits. They can either go out and buy themselves chairs, desks, certain bits of IT support to make their working and home conditions better. And that's predicated on them having all done a DSC assessment in their home so that we've got a safe working environment for them. And we can do that through one or two routes. We can either order it for them, or if they want to go and order it themselves, they can. In the past, that would have come with a tax liability. It's one of the things that the government has waived. So up to a certain level that we can do that. We've set aside the money to do it. So it's a really good question because you're right. We're past the stage now where we were just making it work because we were in a difficult set of circumstances. We're now actually talking about, and as you said, Chair, the restart element of this is restarting will include an element of working from home. And I think it will probably be one of the things that post-COVID we will have a lot more of forever because we've had the best pilot ever and demonstrated that we can get over issues around security and around actually the logistics around IT and make this work. And there are benefits to certainly a lot of employees. If you pick just as probably a final element for me on that, some of our lowest paid employees, I've had them comment that this has saved them between 100 and 150 pounds a month in fuel in some cases. That's actually quite a big proportion of some people's take-home pay. It's also saved on the environment, and we've found it to be really efficient. People have been really effective at working at home. So we do need to make sure that that home working environment is actually safe. The last thing we want is somebody working from home sat at the kitchen table for 8 hours a day, and 6 months from now they've got a debilitating condition as a result of doing it. So it is important that we fix that, and we are in the process of doing it. On the broader restart, is that I don't know if that's what you wanted me to talk about, Chair, or were you just referring to?
Yeah, fine. Yeah. I didn't want to preempt anything that might come up in a planning day, like on Friday or any other day, you see, really. But since you were since the subject was raised, I thought there's no harm.
I mean, on the broader restart, ACO Gus O'Rourke is leading on that as a piece of work for us, and each department has done personal risk assessments. In effect, I was in the process of doing risk assessments for the way that we work at the moment, with a view to trying to restart things. We are looking at our guiding principles that we set up in the first place, because we do think the time is probably coming to start to shift some of them very gradually, but to have in place, in effect, fail-safes that if the circumstances change, whether it be something like a local lockdown or a spike or a second wave, that we would very rapidly move back to our existing principles, which were very risk averse. They quite often, they always meet at least the government's guidelines, and in a lot of cases we are beyond that line by some way. We have put processes in place that are actually out with the government's process to protect our staff and the community. So perhaps one for us to talk about in more detail with all members at a planning day, and there is an element of that. But for the time being, it's probably quick summary to say that we're in the process of, across every department in the service, looking at what restart looks like.
Yeah, fine. Any other questions?
Can I just ask if...
Yeah, fine, Gina, yeah.
Yeah, could Benji give us a forward?
Hello, Gina.
Yeah, sorry,
it's your voice was breaking up there, so just repeat the question again.
The mute kept going on and off. I don't know. I'm not touching it, honest. If Benji could give us a forward calendar for the events that he's talked about, there were an awful lot of them, and I know we get posts to tell us as they're happening, but it would be good to actually be aware of them beforehand. Thank you.
Officers to respond.
Hi, members. Yes, we have got a qualities events calendar, so I can make sure that gets out to everybody. And going forward, I'll make sure that before every financial year that everyone knows what's planned for the future.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yep.
No. Okay. Thank you for that report, Benji and Mark. I believe we're able to move to note the report and move to the next item. I'll pause for 10 seconds then. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item. Item 7, Safety Central Annual Report 2019-20, pages 103 to 122. We were sent out a new agenda item on this. I hope everyone received it. But if someone didn't get it in the post, for whatever reason, there were just some typos in paras 3 and para 11, if I remember correctly. So the substantive report that you were sent in hard copy previously and online, all the statistical data is accurate. Mark, shown to report.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members. I'm Mark Schoen. I'm the manager of Safety Central. I'm pleased to be able to report agenda item 7, which is the annual report for Safety Central for the last full financial year 2019-20. This is the second annual report I've presented to this committee. The first one last September covered our first 2.5 years of operation as a centre. This is the first full year annual report, so I propose that we stick with this format in future years to enable comparison. If I may, I'd like to walk you through the key points of the report, starting on page 107. The report is split into four main sections, really. The first one being visitor numbers on page 109. We are pleased to report a 26% increase in the number of visitors to Safety Central over the last 12 months. We had a target of 9,000 visitors to achieve in year. We were slightly short of that owing to the last 2 or 3 weeks of March being cancelled owing to the COVID-19 lockdown. But nevertheless, it's a significant improvement on the year before. Importantly, we attracted a more diverse range of visitors this year through the launch of our community group program, which is aimed at adult visitors. So that's something we wish to build on once we're able to recommence our full program of activity. If I may just go to the next section, visitors learning and experience, which is page 112. The key one for us really is measuring the difference in safety and life skills knowledge, particularly among children and young people before and after a visit to the centre. We've been able to show a 68% improvement in knowledge before and after a visit this year. It's slightly lower than the year before, but that's because we've included numbers this year from our Key Stage 1 cohort, so the very youngest children that visit the centre. We've had some terrific feedback from teachers and group leaders in terms of the level of benefit they feel the young people receive from visiting the centre, and particularly the numbers that would visit again, and some really good qualitative feedback which we're building into our plans for the year ahead, and that's detailed on pages 113 and 14. In terms of objectives for the last 12 months, I've already mentioned the overall visitor numbers, which we were just shy of because of COVID-19. Volunteer ranger recruitment and retention remains a challenge for us. Typically, you can keep hold of a volunteer for about 2 years. I think the national evidence shows. We've still got many of the original volunteers from when we first opened. Before lockdown, we had about 37 active volunteers and a further 5 in the recruitment pipeline. I'm happy to say about 20 of those volunteers are happy to recommence volunteering with us as soon as we're able to put them through the necessary individual risk assessments to return to volunteer. Two other big achievements last year were the replacement of our shop safety scenario, which those of you who have visited Safety Central will remember was originally a Tesco. We got around £35,000 worth of support from the co-op, and they've put in a fully interactive facility with a working till and some other features which helps us bring some of those safety messages to life. We've also launched a new website which has really streamlined our booking process for schools and community groups, and will enable our volunteer rangers to self-roster against slots once that's back up and running again properly. In terms of plans for year ahead, the final section of the report, which starts on 119, we really are governed really by our restart plan for the centre. So we've, over the last 3 weeks, hosted a series of family visits, small family visits, just to get used to having people back in the building in a COVID safe way. We had around 270 people over that period, which has been really encouraging. The next phase of the plan is to restart Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 primary school visits for up to 30 children at a time, just one group a day. We're just in the process now of reconfirming the visits for the autumn term with schools that had already booked on, and offering up any spare dates to schools that had to cancel between March and July. Phase 4 of the programme, which we're all looking forward to, fingers crossed, is the relaunch of the full programme, hopefully from January 2021, but we are going to take a view on that at the autumn half term in October. And then finally, some objectives for the year ahead. We've obviously got the one around visitor numbers, which will be dictated by how many people we can actually get through in light of the restart plan. Volunteer rangers as well. The two big projects really are replacing the building site scenario in the street scene, which feedback shows is probably the most underutilised area of the centre at the moment. We have a plan to create a multi-purpose classroom space in that area, and to recommission the films that we show when people enter the tour and then finish, because they're already showing signs of becoming a little dated. That concludes the report. If any members have got any questions they'd like to ask, I'd be happy to take.
Thank you for the report, Mark. Have any members indicated they wish to speak?
I think Councillor
Is
Daniels.
Rosa Daniels?
Thank you, Chairman. I note that you communicate this with schools, but how do you communicate with our communities to encourage them to visit? And would it be possible to receive some electronic information about the Safety Centre, which I could share with my community?
Officers to respond?
Yes, of course, Councillor Daniels. So that's part and parcel of us relaunching the website this year, actually, to provide clearer information about all of our programmes, including the community group programme. We have an officer who's partly dedicated to social media, so she's been doing quite a lot of work during lockdown to identify community groups, particularly in areas of multiple deprivation, to try and target them to visit. And we are currently looking at repurposing some of our marketing materials. The challenge we have with community groups at the moment is the current government guidelines and restrictions don't allow us to mix that number of households in the building. So hence why we haven't recommenced the community group programme, but hopefully that will be restarting from January.
Okay, any others? Can I just ask a question, Mark, or if it's someone else to respond? Are we going to take the opportunity as people return back to promote, the inoculation, the flu jabs? Given that we're going up to the winter months now, we see it as priority, obviously, for our key workers. Are we going to promote it in the Safety Central as well?
Chair, it's Mark Cashin here. I'll just take that. We've actually offered flu jabs to all of our staff. Is that our staff you're talking about?
No, I mean, are we going to promote it when with the reopening of the Safety Central recess? Are we going to promote flu jabs going forward?
We can certainly do it to our volunteer rangers who come back, many of whom fall within the kind of age range and vulnerability risk factor for flu jabs. But the two programmes that are going to be running until Christmas are the Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 schools programmes. So probably not the cohort to target that at. I think that's probably one for when we get the community groups back in from January.
Okay, I wasn't suggesting we offer them flu jabs. It was just a suggestion that maybe if you provide literature, the children take it back, when they go home, Yeah. But fine, that's fine. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes, Chair.
Les?
Yeah, talking of publicising the visits to Safety Central, you talk of the website and social media. What about the local newspaper? The Guardian series goes out in most of the towns in Cheshire. That would be a good outlet as well for publicising it.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. Yes, we've actually prepared 2 or 3 press releases with our colleagues in corporate communications to go out as soon as we're confident that the programmes will be restarting. So they should appear in the local press.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so anybody else? No, okay, thank you for the report, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I believe we're able to note the report, move to the next item, but I'll pause for 10 seconds in case any member disagrees. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item. Item 8, Northwest Fire Control Annual Report 2019-20. Hugh Coates to report.
Good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. I'm Hugh Coates, and this is the annual report for Northwest Fire Control. Members will be aware that Northwest Fire Control has been providing call handling and mobilising functions to the service since 2014. It provides us with quarterly performance reports each year, and it's a summary of these reports that's contained herein. It's worth noting that in 2019, Northwest Fire Control appointed a data analyst within the organisation, and born out of that, there's been some changes to the actual performance measures that are reported on now, and this is agreed at board level. So what I propose to do, I'll talk you through what these changes are, and then I'll pick out some highlights within the report. So firstly, underneath the heading of call handling performance, and this is paragraph 4, Northwest Fire Control now reports on both the total number of emergency calls and the total number of admin calls received by the fire services that it provides functions for. And this gives us a clearer picture of the overall workload that Northwest Fire Control undertake, lets us know whether they're resourced correctly, or conversely, whether fire services need to look at their own internal procedures and policies to perhaps reduce the burden of workload on Northwest Fire Control. Additionally, they now report on calls that generate a call challenge prompt from the control room operator. So an example of these would be the calls from automatic fire alarm receiving centres, where Cheshire's been leading the way to kind of drive down unwanted fire signals over recent years. Additionally, they now report on mobilising times for appliances broken down by incident type. So this gives a more complete picture of the overall performance of Northwest Fire Control and distinguishes between fire calls and special service calls, because it's widely acknowledged that the time for the call handling procedures for those two incident types is vastly different. And in addition, they also report on staffing levels, which gives us an overall picture of the health of the organisation, both literally and metaphorically, and lets us know whether the resourcing model and the staffing model is fit for purpose. So if I just draw your attention to the table under paragraph 5, this is under the heading of call handling performance. This details the total number of emergency calls and admin calls received for each of the 4 quarters, and it's broadly comparable with the previous 2 years. It's acknowledged that there'll be occasional significant spikes in activity. For example, we had the Moreland fires in the summer of 2018, but there are proven systems embedded within Northwest Fire Control to allow them to deal with these seasonal fluctuations and spate conditions without any due concern. So this shows us that overall activity by these 2 measures is broadly the same as it has been in recent years. Moving on to the next section, I draw your attention to the table under paragraph 7. Initially, so this shows how many calls have been challenged through the call challenging prompts, and then subsequently how many were mobilised to and how many weren't mobilised to. Now, initially, that makes the alarm bells ringing, no pun intended, because it looks like more of these call challenges result in a mobilisation than not. However, it's worth noting that this contains all of the incident types, including animal rescues, bonfires, and gaining entry incidents. It's not just automatic fire alarm signals. Cheshire's still considered to be leading the way regionally in terms of reducing unwanted fire alarm signals, and it's worth noting that 2 of our neighbouring services are looking to adopt the same procedures in the next 12 months. Moving on to the next section, under paragraph 10, this shows us the percentage of calls that are answered within 10 seconds. The National Fire Chiefs Council have set a target that 95% of emergency calls should be answered within this 10-second target. And we can see from the stats shown there that this has been met in each of the 4 quarters. And this is an improvement on previous years. This is the first year that we've fallen within this target. We've seen year-on-year improvement. Last year, in 2019, we were looking at around 94% average, but this year we have actually hit the target. So that's a good news story for Northwest Fire Control. The next section looks at the time of call to time of alerting the first resources for all emergency calls. And this is split between fire incidents and special service calls. So a national target was recommended again by what was the Chief Fire Officers Association, now the NFCC, that fire incidents should have a resource mobilised to them within 90 seconds of a call being answered. So if we turn over the leaf, there are 2 charts there, the top of which shows Cheshire's mobilising times for fires. And we can see that on average, we were mobilising within 91 seconds. So we're 1 second over that target. But it is worth noting that 2 small vehicle fires in October 2019, which they had issues locating, significantly skewed these figures. And if we were to remove those outlying incidents, the overall target would be, the overall average, would be 89 seconds. With regards to special service calls, it's acknowledged nationally that a 90-second target is unrealistic for special service calls. These are incidents such as road traffic collisions, hazardous material incidents, They don't tend to occur at addressable locations, so there's necessarily more questioning required by the control room operator before they can mobilise an appliance. So the average time to mobilise to special service calls this year has been a minute slower than the fire instance, coming in at 151 seconds. There's work ongoing within North West Fire Control to try and streamline mobilising rules and pre-mobilising actions to improve these times. So an example of the sort of work we're doing is taking off what we call mob rules. These are effectively flags which are attached to individual appliances that the fire service put on, and they require a manual intervention from the control room operator. And while it might only be 5 or 10 seconds worth of information to assimilate, it's obviously contributing to this the overall mobilising time. So we're just looking at where we can streamline those or possibly get rid of them where they're kind of old and redundant. So moving on to the cost of the service, I'll draw your attention to the table under paragraph 18. Cheshire Fire and Rescue Service currently pays for 18% of the total cost of North West Fire Control. If you look this year, on average, we have contributed to 19.35% of the overall operational activity, but it's worth bearing in mind that annual fluctuations are to be expected. Last year, year ending 2019, we were at 17.55%, so 18% seems broadly commensurate with the activity that we're generating. If we turn over to page 128, I'll just draw your attention to some figures regarding staffing levels. So staffing levels are now being reported on, and the table under paragraph 23, the top line of that shows us the number of occasions or the overall percentage that optimum staffing was available within a control room. So these are shifts that don't require on-call staff to be called back in, or any overtime shifts to ensure that the optimum staffing is available. And we can see it's in the 90s throughout all of the 4 quarters, with a particularly strong showing in the Q4, which was obviously affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, which I'll go on to in a little bit under business continuity. We can also see that under paragraph 24, that the average number of shifts lost per person due to sickness is coming down slightly from the previous year, which is, again is an optimistic trend, is a positive trend. Moving on to business continuity then. In keeping with most organisations, North West Fire Control has existing business continuity plans, and these are tested on an annual basis. We undertook a full business continuity exercise in December. This is where we effectively simulate an entire system outage and revert to what we call fallback procedures. And these exercises, in keeping with the previous ones, have demonstrated that the systems they have in place to deal with this kind of unexpected event are fit for purpose and result in no kind of loss of frontline services. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, North West Fire Control have had to review some of their business continuity plans, as I'm sure a lot of organisations globally have. And they've set up some new systems in a very dynamic fashion to deal with the anticipated loss of staff and shortfall in staff. They worked alongside the 4 fire and rescue services to ensure that the risk assessments for the staff that they've got there were fit for purpose, and they were maximising the safety of their staff. And they also re-engaged with some recently retired members of staff to provide extra resilience in the case of loss of staff. However, it's worth noting that throughout the entire lockdown period and up to this point, they haven't had to use these, nor have they had to reduce the overall level of service that they provide for the 4 fire and rescue services. So they've continued to provide frontline services as well as the additional admin services that they provide for us. In terms of COVID absences, there have been 15 people totaling 93 days absent throughout the entire lockdown period to date. However, none of these have actually tested positive for COVID-19. These have been people who have either been symptomatic or have been living with people who are symptomatic. But it is worth noting that although this figure does sound significant, it hasn't led to any disruption in the service that they provide. Okay, happy to field any questions that you might have. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Have any members indicated they wish to speak?
No one's indicated at this point.
Okay. I'll do another call. Getting off lightly there, Hugh. Okay. I believe we're able to note the report and move to the next item. I'll pause for 10 seconds in case any member disagrees. Oh, and thanks for the update on business continuity as well. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item, item 9, Prevention Partnerships Annual Report 2019-20. Nick Evans to report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. My name is Victoria Elliott, and I'm here today to present the Prevention Partnerships Annual Report 2020, which is attached as Appendix 1 to Item 9, and that begins on page 133 of your agenda pack. The purpose of the report is to provide members with an overview of the partnership performance for the year 2019-20. Contained within the report are some of the more significant partnerships led by the Prevention Department. These partnerships involve either seconded staff, additional funding, or large data sharing agreements. The service has a long-standing history of leading on or being a key partner agency in high-performing partnerships. Each partnership led by the service is subject to internal and external scrutiny and is continually monitored, reviewed, and evaluated throughout to measure outcome-based success, the details of which you will find in the performance section of this report. Focusing on evaluation, I'd like to highlight a few things within the report. First, may I draw your attention to page 138, which contains an overview of the Fit for Safety partnership that we have with Halton Borough Council. On that page, you'll find a graph that shows a sharp decline in the number of burns injuries versus a large increase in home safety installation visits. The service commissioned an independent review to be conducted by a national burn specialist, and the review concluded that the prevention activity of the Fit for Safety partnership was likely to have had a direct impact on the number of burn injuries for children under the age of 5. However, it is important to note that further scrutiny of societal influence was required to prove a direct link. And it's envisaged this will take place towards the end of 2020, and the findings will be included in next year's annual report. Moving on. Secondly, if I can draw members' attention, please, to page 142. This includes an overview of the Safe and Well partnerships, and the report outlines the findings of another independent review, but this time on the effectiveness of the atrial fibrillation and affordable warmth screenings as part of the Safe and Well partnership. The review looked at data for the financial years 17-18 and 18-19, and I'm pleased to report that the report concluded that atrial fibrillation screenings carried out by the service have potentially averted up to 12 strokes and saved the NHS up to £500,000 in gross treatment costs. It also concluded that £19,495 in savings were realised by householders living with fuel poverty. Finally, if I may draw members' attention to page 145, you'll find a brief overview of the service's community support efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic. The figures contained within the infographic relate to Q1 only, and the to-date figures are much higher. In addition to the support offers contained within the infographic, during the summer holidays, the service has also delivered 152 education resource packs and laptops provided by the Department for Education to young people, and 119 free school meals to eligible households. Partner feedback has been obtained by all of the statutory agencies that we've supported for all elements of the community support, and I'm proud to report that the feedback so far has been extremely positive. I'd like to thank members for reading the report, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Sorry about that. I had Nick down as the reporting officer. My apologies. Have any members indicated they wish to speak? Very good report.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No questions from anyone at this point.
Okay, well, take that as acknowledgement. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
There you go. Okay, I believe we're able to note the report and move to the next item. I'll pause for 10 seconds in case any member disagrees there. Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item, the final item. In fact, item 10, Forward Work Programme, Andrew Ledbetter. Is there anything to add to the plan, Andrew?
I don't believe there is. Nothing's been raised at the meeting, and I think you've got a pretty decent agenda for the November meeting already.
Yeah, we have. Okay, I'll pause for 10 seconds in case any member has anything they wish to add. Well, that sounds like we're happy there. Okay, thank you. That concludes the meeting. Thank you for everyone for bearing with the technical issues earlier on. Thank you, and thank you for your input. Okay, I'll see you in November, or if not before, at a planning day. Okay, goodbye.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
Hi, Chairman. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.